The sun was warm that morning as the film crew prepared for another long day of shooting. Cameras were being checked, lights adjusted, and extras moved around in preparation for the next scene. Among all the rush, Keanu moved quietly, not drawing any attention to himself. He carried a calm presence that seemed unusual in such a loud, busy place. While others stressed about lines, schedules, and equipment, he stayed gentle and composed. He greeted the cameramen with a soft smile, asked the makeup team if they had eaten breakfast, and even helped a young assistant lift a heavy box without being asked. People admired him. He was a superstar, yet he never acted like one. Many of the crew whispered stories about him, how he would sit with the janitors during breaks, how he gave away part of his salary once to help others. For some, he was like a mystery, a man who had fame and money, but never let it change his heart. On this particular day, the set was buzzing with tension. The director was worried about the weather. The assistant director shouted about the schedule falling behind. Everyone was tense, but Keanu, sitting quietly in a corner with a book in his hand, looked like none of that could disturb his peace. He didn't argue. He didn't complain. He just waited patiently until he was needed. When his scene was called, he stood up slowly, adjusted his jacket, and walked toward the stage with soft steps. He wasn't the type to demand attention, yet people noticed him anyway. His silence had weight. People naturally looked at him, waiting for what he would do next. Even the young actors who were still trying to prove themselves watched him carefully, hoping to learn something from the way he carried himself. But not everyone liked this quiet strength. Among the actors was a woman who couldn't stand him. She was talented, yes, but her heart was filled with envy. She believed attention belonged to those who shouted the loudest, who demanded to be seen, and here was Keanu, doing nothing but staying silent. And somehow he received more respect than she ever did. Every smile he gave, every calm nod, it all burned inside her like fire. As Keanu prepared for his take, he thanked the lighting crew and even adjusted a prop so that no one else had to. "Is this okay?" he asked softly. The crew nodded, almost surprised that a man of his status would care about such small details. The scene went smoothly. He delivered his lines in his natural, calm way, and when the director yelled, "Cut," he stepped back, letting others take the spotlight. No arrogance, no ego, just simple professionalism. During the lunch break, Keanu sat alone on a bench eating the same meal as everyone else. He didn't ask for special food, didn't demand luxury. Instead, he listened quietly to the crew laughing, nearby. Occasionally he smiled, but he didn't interrupt. His presence alone was comforting, like a calm river running beside a noisy road. The woman who hated him watched from a distance, her eyes narrow, her thoughts sharp. She whispered to another actor, "Why does everyone praise him so much? He barely talks, he's nothing special." But the actor just shrugged. "Sometimes silence is stronger than words," he replied. This only made her more furious. Later in the afternoon, a new actor, nervous and shaking, forgot his lines during a scene with Keanu. The director grew angry, yelling at the young man, but Keanu raised his hand gently. "It's okay, let's try again," he said. His calm tone softened the director's temper. The young actor looked at him with gratitude, and when they did the scene again, it went smoothly. The whole set noticed it wasn't just his acting that impressed people, it was his humanity. By the evening, the day had stretched long and heavy. Crew members were exhausted, but Keanu still moved slowly, helping to clear small items. He didn't have to, yet he did. That was the way he was, a man who never let fame build a wall between him and ordinary kindness. The jealous actress, however, burned with anger. She saw how even in silence he drew respect. She saw how his kindness made people admire him more than her loudness ever could. To her, his calmness was not strength. It was an insult. She told herself that he needed to be humbled, that someone like him couldn't always walk away untouchable. But Keanu never noticed her hatred. He didn't waste time on gossip or jealousy. His world was simple. Treat people with respect, do your job, stay humble. That day ended like so many others, with him leaving the set quietly, nodding to the security guard. and disappearing into the night without fuss. No one knew it yet. But this quiet filming day was the spark that lit the fire. The woman's jealousy, growing and twisting, would soon lead her to a decision she would regret forever. She would try to break him, but she did not know the truth. Keanu didn't need words or anger to destroy her. His silence would be enough. The next morning on set, the sun was shining brightly, but inside the heart of the jealous actress, there was no light. She arrived in her usual dramatic way, wearing expensive clothes and speaking loudly so everyone would notice her. She laughed a little too hard at small jokes, clapped her hands to get attention, and tried to stand in the middle of every group. But no matter how hard she tried, people's eyes often drifted toward Keanu, even when he wasn't doing anything at all. Keanu had walked in quietly that day, holding a cup of coffee he bought himself. He didn't have assistants carrying bags for him. He didn't shout out greetings to force attention. He simply gave a polite nod to the crew members, smiled gently, and went straight to his spot to wait for instructions. The crew liked him, not because he tried to impress them, but because he was real. He treated everyone the same way, with respect and kindness. The actress noticed this again and again. It burned inside her like a flame. She had spent years building her image, creating scandals, and pushing herself into the headlines. She believed fame was about being loud and making people look at you, but here was Keanu, quiet and simple, and yet he was the one everyone admired. She could not understand it, and worse, she could not accept it. During rehearsal, she tried to stand closer to him, hoping to steal the attention. She exaggerated her lines, moved her hands dramatically, and even interrupted the director with suggestions. But Keanu stayed calm. His performance was natural, effortless. He didn't need to push. His presence alone made the scene feel real. The director praised him. The crew clapped softly, and the actress stood there smiling on the outside but boiling on the inside. When they took a break, she cornered another actor. "Do you really think Keanu is that good?" she asked in a low voice. The actor shrugged. "He's different. He's kind. He doesn't play games." That simple answer made her furious. To her, it wasn't kindness, it was weakness. How could people admire a man who spoke so little? How could they respect someone who never fought for attention? She began whispering behind his back, planting seeds of doubt among those who would listen. "He only pretends to be nice," she said. "It's all an act to make himself look better." Some nodded politely but didn't believe her. Others ignored her. Deep down, most of the crew had already experienced Keanu's kindness firsthand. They had seen him help carry heavy lights, share food with extras, and sit with workers who were usually invisible on set. Her words fell like stones into a lake, making ripples but never sinking him. That evening, she sat in her dressing room, staring at her reflection. "Why him?" she whispered. Her jealousy twisted her thoughts. In her mind, Keanu wasn't just another actor. He was her obstacle, the wall that stood between her and the spotlight she believed she deserved. She thought of all the headlines praising him, all the fans who called him humble and gentle. She felt invisible in comparison, and her pride could not handle it. The more she thought, the darker her ideas became. She told herself that people only loved him because he never faced real trouble. If someone broke his image, if someone forced him into the dirt, then maybe the world would see him for what she believed he really was, a weak man hiding behind silence. Her lips curled into a smile, not of happiness, but of cruel satisfaction. She had decided she would be the one to expose him, to show everyone that their beloved Keanu was not untouchable. On set the next day, her eyes followed him like a predator watching prey. Keanu, unaware, continued his usual routine. He helped an assistant who dropped a stack of papers. He shared a kind word with a nervous extra. He laughed quietly at a small joke one of the crew members made. He lived as he always did, with humility. But to the jealous actress, every act of kindness felt like an insult to her. It reminded her of the gap between them, a gap she could not close no matter how hard she tried. By the afternoon, she made her decision final. She spoke secretly with two men she knew from outside the industry. They were rough, greedy, and willing to do anything for money. She told them lies about Keanu, painting him as arrogant. She promised them payment if they could teach him a lesson. The men agreed, believing it would be easy. After all, Keanu was quiet, polite, and not known for violence. They thought he would be simple to break. As she left the meeting that night, a strange thrill ran through her. For the first time in weeks, she felt powerful. She imagined the headlines, the whispers, the laughter behind Keanu's back when he finally looked small and broken. She pictured herself shining brighter while he faded into silence. What she did not realize was that silence was his greatest strength, and her plan would not break him. It would destroy her. The days that followed, she kept her act perfect, smiling sweetly on set, laughing at jokes and pretending everything was normal. But inside, she counted the hours, waiting for the moment her men would strike. She believed she was in control, that her jealousy had found its answer. But the truth was simple. Jealousy had already made her blind, and her downfall had already begun. The actress could not sleep that night. Her mind spun with jealousy and schemes. She kept thinking of Keanu's calm face, his quiet nods, the way people admired him without him ever trying. It felt unbearable. She wanted to crush that image of perfection. She wanted to see fear in his eyes. She wanted to prove that he was not some saint, that he could be broken like anyone else. As the city lights flickered outside her window, she made her plan. She knew two men who had no care for right or wrong. They were the kind who lived by taking from others, rough and hungry for money. She had met them at parties before, men who would do anything if the price was right. She reached for her phone and sent a message, short and simple. "I have a job for you." The next evening, she sat in a small cafe at the edge of the city, waiting. Her sunglasses covered her eyes, though it was already dark. Soon, the two men walked in, their steps heavy, their eyes sharp. They sat across from her, one grinning with missing teeth, the other lighting a cigarette even though the sign on the wall said no smoking. She leaned closer, speaking in a low voice. "There's a man I want you to handle." They laughed, expecting some kind of jealous lover or business rival. But when she said Keanu's name, they stopped, surprised. "The movie star?" one of them asked. She nodded. "Yes, but don't be fooled by his fame. He's weak. He hides behind silence. I want the world to see that he's nothing." The men exchanged a look. Fame meant risk, but risk also meant more money. "And what do you want us to do?" one asked. She leaned back, her lips curving into a cold smile. "Nothing too dramatic, just enough to make him look small, push him around, humiliate him, make him afraid. I'll handle the rest." They asked about payment, and she promised them enough cash to keep them satisfied. They didn't need details. They liked the idea of hurting someone famous, imagining how it would feel to have a star trembling in front of them. They agreed, shaking her hand roughly before leaving. As she walked out of the cafe later, her heels clicking against the pavement, she felt powerful. For weeks she had been burning inside, watching Keanu walk around like a king in silence. Now she had found a way to cut that silence. She imagined the moment, the crew whispering that Keanu had been beaten, the directors doubting his strength, the fans questioning his calm image. She told herself it would be perfect. Meanwhile, Keanu had no idea of the storm brewing. That night he returned home after filming, carrying a small bag of groceries. He greeted the shopkeeper with a smile, stopped to pet a stray dog, and climbed the stairs to his simple apartment. His life was quiet, almost ordinary. He read for a while, then sat by the window listening to the sounds of the city. For him, fame had never been about pride. It was just part of his work. He never imagined someone could hate him so much just because of his peace. Back in her room, the actress rehearsed her own lies. She planned to act shocked when the news came out. She would pretend to care, even offer sympathy. But deep down, she wanted people to see him shaken, bruised, and silent in a way that wasn't admired but pitied. In her twisted mind, this was justice. The days that followed felt long. She kept watching him on set, waiting for the right moment. Her eyes followed his every move, every time he picked up a prop, thanked a crew member, or smiled softly, her jealousy sharpened. The men sent her messages. "We're ready when you are." She told them soon. Very soon. Her plan seemed perfect to her, after all. Keanu was not known for fights. He didn't go around with bodyguards. He didn't shout or threaten. He lived simply, walking the streets like a normal man. To her, he looked vulnerable, and that was exactly what she wanted. She thought breaking him would be easy. But what she failed to understand was that true strength doesn't need to be loud. True strength is not about fists or threats. Keanu's strength came from patience, discipline, and a calm spirit built through years of pain and experience. The very silence she hated was the thing that would make him untouchable. Still, in her mind, she was already celebrating. She imagined his silence turning into shame. She imagined herself standing taller while he fell. The plan was simple. The men would catch him when he left set one evening when no one was around. They would push him, threaten him, rough him up until the image of calmness broke. She would make sure the whispers spread, and from there, his reputation would crumble. The night before it was supposed to happen, she sat alone in her dressing room, looking at herself in the mirror. Her eyes were dark with determination. "Tomorrow," she whispered to her reflection, "tomorrow the world will see who he really is." She felt unstoppable, she thought. She was about to win, but she had no idea that her plan was already doomed. She did not know that Keanu's silent strength was greater than any violence she could send his way. She did not know that by trying to break him, she was only setting the stage for her own destruction. The night was quiet when filming ended. The crew packed up the heavy equipment. The director muttered about tomorrow's schedule, and people hurried off to their cars. Keanu stayed behind for a little while, helping one of the assistants fold up a table. He never rushed, never acted like he was too important for small things. When everything was done, he slipped on his jacket, thanked the guard at the studio gate, and started walking home. The city. Streets were dimly lit. A few neon signs buzzed in the distance, and the hum of traffic echoed faintly. Keanu's steps were steady. His mind was calm. He liked walking after work. It cleared his thoughts. Sometimes he even stopped to greet people who recognized him, though he never drew attention to himself. This night felt like any other, at least until he turned into a narrow alley that cut across toward his building. The shadows moved before he noticed them. Two men stepped out, blocking his path. Their faces were rough, their eyes cold. One had a scar across his cheek. The other cracked his knuckles with a smirk. "Well, look who it is," one of them sneered. "The quiet movie star?" Keanu paused, but he didn't panic. His hands slipped casually into his pockets. His shoulders relaxed. He didn't speak. Instead, he studied their movements, the way they tried to puff up their chests to look intimidating. His silence made them uncomfortable. They expected fear. They expected excuses. But all they got was calmness. "You think you're better than everyone, don't you?" the scarred man barked, stepping closer. Keanu didn't answer. He only tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. The second man shoved his shoulder roughly. "Say something," he demanded. Still, Keanu said nothing. His silence was heavier than words. The men grew irritated. Their plan had been simple: scare him, humiliate him, maybe rough him up enough that he wouldn't forget. But something about his calmness made them feel like children throwing tantrums. His stillness made them look smaller. The first man lunged suddenly, trying to grab his collar. Keanu shifted his body smoothly, not with violence but with practiced ease. The man's hand swiped through empty air. His own momentum sent him stumbling forward. Keanu stepped aside, as if guiding him without effort. The second man tried to swing at him, but Keanu raised his arm, deflecting the punch with controlled precision. The sound of fists hitting nothing but the cold night air echoed sharply. He didn't strike back. He didn't curse or threaten. Every movement he made was defensive, calm, like water slipping around rocks in a stream. The men became frustrated. Their grunts filled the alley as they tried again and again, but each attempt ended in failure. Keanu moved just enough to avoid, his breathing steady, his eyes clear. "Fight us, you coward," one of them shouted. But Keanu only stood taller, his silence louder than any insult. He didn't need to prove anything. His calmness was unshakable. The scarred man rushed again, but Keanu caught his arm, twisted gently, and let him fall to the ground without real harm. The man groaned, embarrassed. His partner hesitated now, sweat forming on his brow. This wasn't going the way they thought. They had expected fear. They had expected to see the movie star beg. Instead, they were the ones stumbling, looking foolish. Keanu looked down at them, his expression steady. There was no anger, no smugness, only quiet strength. He didn't need to say a word. His silence was like a mirror, forcing them to see their own weakness. For a moment, the alley felt frozen, as if even the city itself was watching. The second man tried one last time, rushing with a desperate swing. Keanu sidestepped, guided the man's arm past him, and lightly pushed his back so that he tripped forward into the wall. The sound of impact echoed. The man cursed under his breath, then backed away, nursing his hand. Both men stood there, breathing hard, defeated without ever being struck in anger. Their pride was bruised more than their bodies. Keanu straightened his jacket, his calm face unchanged. He gave them a single look, steady, unshaken, and then he simply walked past them. His footsteps were slow, but they carried the weight of someone untouchable. The men didn't chase him, they couldn't. They had been beaten without blows, destroyed not by fists but by silence. As they watched his figure disappear into the night, they realized they had underestimated him. The man they thought was weak had shown them a strength they didn't even understand. In the shadows of a nearby corner, someone else had been watching. The jealous actress had followed at a distance, eager to see Keanu humiliated. She had imagined him lying on the ground, begging for mercy. She had imagined the taste of victory. But what she saw instead froze her heart. The men she had trusted to break him had failed, and not because he fought like a wild man, but because he hadn't needed to fight at all. His silence had destroyed them. She clenched her fists, anger boiling inside her. This wasn't the story she wanted. This wasn't how it was supposed to end. Yet deep down, a part of her felt fear. She had underestimated him too. Keanu never looked back. His walk remained calm until he reached the end of the alley, blending back into the city lights as if nothing had happened. But the men and the woman who had plotted against him would never forget that night. For them, his silence would echo louder than any shout. The night was still echoing in the minds of the two men who had tried to attack Keanu. They had walked into that alley with confidence, laughing to themselves, certain that a quiet actor would be no challenge. They had expected him to beg, to tremble, to fold under their fists. Instead, what they faced was something they had never experienced before. Keanu had not shouted, had not fought with wild rage. He had moved with calm precision, each step and gesture controlled. It was as if he had seen every move before it even happened, and their strength had turned into weakness. The men staggered away from the alley after he left, humiliated and confused. One of them rubbed his bruised wrist where Keanu had twisted his arm. The other muttered curses under his breath. But neither dared to follow him. What was that? One asked, still shaking his head. He didn't even hit us. The other spat on the ground, his pride more wounded than his body. I don't know what that was, but it wasn't weakness. For the first time, they felt small. Meanwhile, Keanu walked on as though nothing had happened, his jacket still neat, his face calm. He reached his building, greeted the old guard with a polite nod, and climbed the stairs to his apartment. Inside, he placed his groceries on the counter and poured himself a glass of water. His heart rate was steady. He didn't boast. He didn't even think of victory. For him, it was just another test of patience, another reminder that silence was stronger than noise. The next day on set, whispers began to spread. A few crew members who lived near the alley had seen the commotion. They had seen two rough men stumble out, angry and defeated, and then Keanu walk past them as if untouched. Soon the story grew. People wondered what had really happened. Some said the men tried to rob him. Others claimed it was just a drunken fight, but one detail stayed the same. Keanu had walked away calm, and the men had walked away broken. The young actors gathered around during breaks, whispering about the strange. "Till he didn't even raise his voice," one said. "They say he didn't throw a punch," another added. The crew looked at Keanu with even more respect now. His silence had always impressed them. but now it felt powerful. It was like he carried a shield around him, invisible yet unbreakable. The jealous actress listened to these whispers with growing anger. This was not the outcome she wanted. She had promised herself she would see him weak, humiliated, and stripped of his calm image. Instead, the opposite had happened. The men she had sent were being mocked, and Keanu was being praised. She clenched, her jaw, feeling the sting of failure in her heart. Envy grew sharper. That afternoon, a scene was being shot where Keanu had to deliver a quiet monologue. The studio fell silent as the cameras rolled. His voice was low, filled with calm emotion. Every eye in the room watched him. Every person felt the weight of his words. When the director yelled, "Cut," the room stayed quiet for a few seconds. Then applause broke out. Even the cameramen clapped. The jealous actress sat stiff in her chair, her nails digging into her palm. Later, when she was alone, she slammed her hand on the table. "Why can't he be broken?" she hissed to herself. She thought about the men again, how useless they had been. In her mind, it wasn't her plan that had failed. It was their weakness. She refused to believe that Keanu's silence was stronger than violence. She told herself. She only needed another chance, another way to shatter him. But the men who had been part of her scheme wanted nothing more to do with it. They met her in a parking lot a few days later, their eyes filled with unease. "We're done," one of them said firmly. "That man, he's not what you think. We couldn't touch him, he didn't even fight us, but it felt like we were the ones being tested." The other nodded. "Find someone else, lady. We're not risking that again." The actress tried to argue, offering more money, but they shook their heads and walked away, leaving her fuming. For the first time, doubt whispered in her mind. She pushed it down quickly, telling herself she was still in control. But deep inside, fear had begun to grow. Fear of a man who could defeat violence without violence, who could destroy without saying a word. Keanu, however, carried on as if nothing unusual had happened. He smiled when he arrived on set, helped a sound technician adjust a microphone, and asked the makeup artist how her sick mother was doing. His life continued with simple kindness. He never mentioned the alley, never told anyone what had happened. That silence was his victory. It made the story even more powerful because people filled the gaps themselves, and in every version of the tale, he came out stronger. The actress watched him from a distance, her envy eating her alive. Every time she saw someone thank him, every time she heard someone praise his humility, it was like a knife twisting in her chest. She couldn't understand it. She had tried to break him with force, and he had risen higher instead. The world admired him even more now, and she, despite all her shouting and schemes, was the one fading into the background. She told herself it wasn't over. She would find another way. But the truth was clear. That night in the alley had changed everything. The men who had trusted their fists learned that silence could be sharper than a blade. The crew who whispered about him saw him as more than just a star. They saw him as a man of dignity. And even though Keanu never said a word about it, his silent strength had already begun to destroy the woman who hated him. The two men never came back. After that night in the alley, they disappeared from her plans completely. They didn't answer her calls, didn't reply to her messages. They wanted nothing to do with Keanu. They had faced something they couldn't explain. It wasn't fists or anger that defeated them. It was silence. They told themselves never again. Never with him. And the set, life went on. Cameras rolled, lights glared, people hurried with scripts and props. But something in the air had changed. Whispers traveled like wildfire. Crew members who had heard about the alley spoke quietly when Keanu walked by. They said he didn't fight. He didn't even raise his voice. Yet somehow, two men had walked away from him like cowards. Everyone looked at him with new eyes. Keanu, however, acted as if nothing had happened. He arrived each morning with his gentle nod, greeted everyone, and did his scenes without fuss. He shared food with the extras, carried cables when he saw someone struggling, and never reminded anyone of who he was. He had the quiet grace of someone who didn't need to prove himself. That was what made people admire him even more. The actress who hated him couldn't bear it. She had wanted to see him broken. She had wanted to watch the crowd whisper that he was weak. Instead, they whispered that he was strong, and the cruelest part was that Keanu never defended himself, never bragged, never spoke of what happened. His silence worked against her. The less he spoke, the more powerful the story became. She tried again to whisper poison into people's ears. "He's fake," she said to a makeup artist. "He only pretends to be humble, you'll see one day." But the makeup artist only shrugged. "Even if it's an act, it's a good one. He makes people feel respected." The actress turned away, her anger bubbling inside. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't turn people against him. His silence drowned her words. One afternoon, while waiting for the cameras to reset, a young actor asked Keanu, "Is it true? Did those men really try to attack you?" Keanu looked at him with calm eyes. He didn't smile. He didn't frown. He simply said, "Sometimes the best answer is no answer." Then he walked away. His words were few, but they struck deep. The young actor repeated them later, and soon others were saying the same. His silence had become a lesson. The actress overheard this and nearly shook with rage. She couldn't understand how a man who said so little could inspire so much. She spent her days trying to be noticed, raising her voice, demanding attention. But the more noise she made, the more people turned away from her. And the more Keanu stayed silent, the more people leaned toward him. It was as if the world itself preferred his quiet strength over her loud desperation. At night, she replayed the scene in her mind. She imagined the alley again and again. She had thought he would be on the ground begging for mercy. Instead, the image she couldn't escape was of him walking past, calm and unbroken. The sound of his footsteps haunted her dreams. Those steps had been louder than any punch, louder than any scream. Meanwhile, the crew grew closer to him. They trusted him not because of his fame, but because of his heart. When one of the electrician's children fell sick, Keanu gave money quietly without telling anyone. When a cameraman's car broke down, he offered him a ride home in his modest vehicle. He didn't need cameras or applause. His kindness was real, and still, he never said a word about the alley. He left it for others to decide what story they believed. The two men who had faced him told the story in their own way. In dark bars late at night, they admitted to others, "We tried to take him, but he was like water. He didn't fight, but we couldn't touch him." Their voices carried fear. They didn't even realize it, but with every retelling, they built his legend higher. And the actress who had sent them grew smaller in their shadow. Her silence was different from his. Her silence came from fear, from watching her plan collapse. His silence came from power, from choosing not to fight with words. The more he stayed calm, the louder her failure became. It was eating her from the inside. One evening, as Keanu sat in a corner of the set reading a book, she glared at him from across the room. She wanted to scream, to expose herself, to shout that she had sent those men. But something in his calm posture stopped her. It was as if he already knew, as if he didn't need to say a thing. The weight of that silence crushed her more than public shame ever could. For Keanu, silence was not emptiness. It was a choice, a shield, and sometimes, even a weapon. He had lived through pain in his life. He had lost loved ones, faced loneliness, and carried scars no one could see. Silence had taught him patience, and patience had given him strength. That was why no insult could move him. No threat could shake him. The actress, though, couldn't learn that lesson. She believed noise was power. She believed shouting made her strong. But as days passed, the industry began to notice the difference. Directors trusted Keanu, producers praised his discipline, and young actors followed his example. She was left behind, her voice growing smaller in a place where silence spoke louder than anything she could say. The truth was now clear to everyone but her. Keanu's silence wasn't weakness. It was louder than violence, sharper than lies, and stronger than hate. And with each quiet step he took, her own downfall grew nearer. The whispers on set grew louder with every passing day. People didn't speak openly, but everyone seemed to know that something had happened. Two men had tried to humiliate Keanu, yet they were the ones who walked away humiliated. The story spread like smoke through the crew, then to extras, then to people outside the set. Soon it became a rumor circling the whole city. Some said he had beaten them. Others claimed he never even raised a fist. But the ending was always the same. Keanu walked away calm, untouched, while his attackers left broken. The jealous actress felt the weight of those whispers pressing against her. She had wanted glory. She had wanted Keanu ruined. Instead, her name began to circle too. People wondered why those men had even been there. Some whispered that she might have had something to do with it. They didn't have proof, but her bitterness was no secret. She had spoken badly of Keanu too many times, and now people started to connect the dots. On set, she felt eyes following her, not admiring eyes, but suspicious ones. Every smile she forced looked fake. Every laugh she gave sounded sharp. The more she tried to act normal, the more people saw the cracks in her mask. She hated it. She had worked for years to build her image, and now it was slipping, all because of a man who barely spoke. The truth began to leak slowly. One of the men, drunk and bitter, let it slip. In a bar that they hadn't gone after Keanu on their own, someone had paid them, someone from the inside. A customer overheard and told another. Soon the rumor spread like fire. People began whispering. It was her, wasn't it? She sent them. They didn't need proof. The idea made sense to everyone. The director noticed the tension. He didn't say anything directly, but he kept his distance from her. Producers whispered behind closed doors, wondering if she was worth the trouble. The crew, who had once tolerated her loudness, now avoided her. She would walk into a room and conversations would stop. It was as if the truth had already been decided without a single word spoken. Meanwhile, Keanu went on as always. He didn't feed the rumors. He didn't confirm or deny anything. He carried on with his quiet kindness, helping a set worker carry cables, holding the door for a makeup artist, listening patiently when a nervous young actor asked for advice. His silence spoke louder than any defense he could have given. Everyone could see who he was, and that was enough. One afternoon, as they prepared for a big scene, the actress lost her temper. She snapped at a crew member, yelling loudly over something small. The room went silent. People turned away from her, embarrassed. In that heavy silence, Keanu looked up from where he was sitting. His calm eyes met hers for a moment. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. That single look was enough to make her feel exposed. She stormed out, her heels clicking against the floor, rage boiling inside her. Outside, she leaned against the wall, breathing hard. She felt like everyone was against her, like the world had chosen him and rejected her. And in a way, it was true. People were tired of noise. They preferred the quiet dignity Keanu carried. It made her anger grow, but it also made her afraid. The more she tried to fix her image, the worse it got. She gave forced smiles, tried to act sweet, even brought gifts for the crew. But it was too late. No one believed her anymore. The truth was out there, whispered from one mouth to another, and her reputation crumbled little by little. One evening, as Keanu left the set, a small group of reporters were waiting. They asked him about the rumors, about the men, about the actress. He stopped, looked at them with calm eyes, and said simply, "Sometimes silence says enough." Then he walked away. His answer was short, but it carried more weight than 1,000 accusations. The next morning, his words were in the headlines, praised as wisdom for the actress. That was the final blow. Everyone now believed it. She didn't need to confess. Keanu's silence had revealed the truth more clearly than if he had shouted her name. She sat in her dressing room, staring into the mirror. Her reflection looked older, tired, broken. She realized the power had slipped from her hands completely. She was no longer feared, no longer admired. She was alone. The industry moved on. Quickly, producers stopped calling her. Directors avoided her. Her name, once written in bright letters, began to fade. And all the while, Keanu rose higher without even trying. His silence had destroyed her career, not with cruelty, but with dignity. He had proven that true strength doesn't need noise in the end. Her shocking identity as the one who had sent those men was no longer a secret. It became a lesson whispered among the crew and in the city. Jealousy destroys itself. Lies collapse on their own, and silence, when carried with truth, can be the loudest weapon of all. The days turned into weeks, and the story of the jealous actress spread far beyond the film set. At first it was whispered only among the crew, then it reached producers, journalists, and finally, the wider public. Everyone knew now that she had been the one who sent those men. She never admitted it, but she didn't have to. The truth was already clear to everyone. Her reputation collapsed like a house made of cards. She walked onto the set each morning, but the warmth was gone. No one greeted her with smiles anymore. People avoided her. Crew members looked away when she passed. Conversations stopped when she entered the room. She had always wanted attention, but this silence was unbearable. It wasn't admiration, it was judgment, it wasn't respect, it was rejection. Meanwhile, Keanu carried on as though nothing had changed. He never gloated, never pointed fingers. He did his work with the same calm professionalism as always. His quiet dignity grew heavier each day, and people admired him more because of it. To them, he was proof that true strength wasn't about shouting or fighting, but about standing firm without words. His silence had destroyed her more completely than any revenge ever could. The actress tried to fight back. She called reporters, hoping to tell her side. She gave interviews insisting she was innocent, but her voice sounded desperate. Her words came out bitter. People saw through it. They had already made up their minds. No matter what she said, it only made her look guiltier. The more she spoke, the smaller she became. One evening, after another long day of filming, Keanu walked out of the studio as he always did. The guard at the gate greeted him and he nodded politely. Across the street, a small crowd of fans waited. They waved, calling his name. He smiled, signed a few autographs, asked one young boy about school. He didn't speak much, but every word mattered. His kindness was simple and people loved him for it. From a distance, the actress watched this scene. Her chest felt tight. This was what she had wanted for herself. Adoration, respect, love from strangers. But no matter how hard she had tried, she had never received it in the same way. She finally understood something painful. People didn't love Keanu because of his fame. They loved him because of who he was. His silence was not emptiness, it was character. It was the weight of patience, humility, and discipline. Her own silence, on the other hand, came from shame. She could not speak without exposing her guilt. She could not defend herself without sounding weak. And so she sat in her dressing room at night, staring at her reflection, whispering to herself, "Why him? Why not me?" The answer echoed in her own heart, because she had chosen envy, while he had chosen kindness. The film finally wrapped. The last scene was shot, and the crew clapped for everyone's hard work. People hugged, laughed, and exchanged numbers to stay in touch. Keanu thanked each member personally, from the lead actors to the assistants. He carried boxes, shook hands, and left without any grand speech. His silence once again spoke for him. The actress stood alone in a corner. No one came to her. No one asked for her number. The applause didn't include her. It was the quietest ending she had ever known. And in that silence, she realized she had lost. Not because Keanu had attacked her, but because he never needed to. In the months that followed, her career dried up. Producers didn't want her. Directors avoided her. Casting agents stopped calling. She tried to land roles, but doors closed one after another. Whispers of her jealousy followed her everywhere. She was forgotten, while Keanu's fame grew brighter. Not because of gossip, but because of the quiet way he lived his life. He continued acting, but more than that, he continued being himself. He donated money quietly to those in need. He rode the subway like a normal person. He ate meals in small diners without security. Fans adored him not just for his movies, but for the man he was. And through it all, he never once spoke about the woman who had tried to destroy him. He let silence carry the truth, and that became the final lesson. For everyone who heard the story, it was clear. Noise fades, but silence lasts. Lies crumble, but dignity remains. The actress had shouted, lied, and schemed, but all of it had fallen apart. Keanu had stayed silent, and his silence had outlived her career. Her hatred became her own downfall. His patience became his greatest weapon. In the end, her name disappeared from the lights while his name shone brighter than ever. And though she once believed silence was weakness, the world now knew the truth. Sometimes silence can be louder than any voice, sharper than any blade, and more powerful than any revenge. Keanu never had to destroy her, because her own jealousy had done the work for him.